C-Bus.
Hi, I'm Gary with Multrite. I figure I'd take a couple minutes today just to show you how we go about building a really simple retaining wall. So a couple notes I have is that, there's all kinds of different specifications depending on what type of block you're using and so forth. We're using a very standard type retaining wall block today, and these blocks are they're wedge shaped, so you can make easy curves with them, and they weigh about 75 pounds a piece. You can have all different sizes. I like these big ones for simple walls because once you get them in place, they go nowhere. So a couple things, I just wanted to make this video to walk you through sort of a step-by-step of what you have to do if you want to build a basic decorative retaining wall or a garden wall at your house. As you can see, we've already got started with this, but you'll just need some simple tools like a hand packer. This is a 10 by 10. You'll need a level. You'll need a rake or a shovel, and a couple different type of levels because, for instance, when you level, you'll want to level along the trench like this, like I have it. You can see right now where I have it is level. But sometimes you also want to level this direction on the trench, which I haven't worked with too much yet, because you need to find out if your wall is going to tilt forward and backwards and sideways. When you look at a wall project, this is a pretty simple one. Like I said, if you're building a larger retaining wall, anything over probably 2 foot, you really want to watch what kind of blocks you buy, and the specifications for the block, how deep the footer has to be, etc., to make sure. So in this situation, I just want to show you how to build a simple decorative wall. It'll retain weight up to about 3 feet without too much special attention, as long as you go through the process correctly. But first thing you'll notice is whenever you build a retaining wall, the wall is going to end up being level at the top. So when you look level at the top, there'll be a point in your horizon over here to where ideally you'll have a slope that comes down. At that slope, the wall would be slightly higher than that, and from that point the wall will be straight all the way across to where you have another slope. Or if you don't have another slope, you can step the wall down or step it off. So you try to want to find those positions before you get started. Once you get started with that, it's not always exact science. A lot of times it's going to be a guesstimate, and your wall will end up being a couple feet shorter or a couple feet longer maybe than what you thought about. So first step is to find out where your wall is going to be and paint the area or mark the area on the ground. Next step is going to be to excavate, and basically you want to dig a trench where you're going to build the wall. So this goes back a little bit to the specifications. If you're building a decorative wall, usually a 6 inch to 12 inch base is adequate. These are heavy blocks. We went about a foot down to build a base. So you want to remove as much of the loose kind of material like this towards the end so that you don't have loose dirt in your trench. Something to consider is that clay or dirt does not pack. So you have to remove that and make sure that you can put in a compactable base material. So as far as the compactable base material that we use, we're going to use a compactable, this is a limestone base. So this right here is called 411 limestone, and it has everything down to chips and dust, as well as some larger pieces of stone. You can use 46D, you can use 304. The problem with 304 is the pieces will be a lot bigger and a lot harder to work with. I prefer 411 for my retaining wall base, as long as it's not more than about 12 inches deep. And that'll give you a good compactable base. Now when you compact the base, keep in mind that we've already started compacting this, and as you look at this base, this trench was a foot deep. Now we've got it to the point where you can see it's about 3 inches from the base to the sod, right in this area. And the reason for that is when you build a retaining wall, your bottom block is going to be your base block, and that block is going to be either completely or at least half buried when you build the wall. So take that into account when you do your measurements for how many stones or blocks you're going to have to use, because that bottom block is going to be very little or invisible. It's going to be under the surface. You need that to keep everything from shifting sideways back and forth. You need it to hold in place. So that sort of acts as your footer on the bottom wall. If you're just building a decorative wall, you may or may not want to use glue. We'll talk about that later. Each wall is designed to be built a specific way. So in order to get to the steps that we've looked at over here, first thing we need to do is take our trench here, and we're going to take our 411 gravel just like this, and I'm going to put it in this trench, and we're going to start packing it. As far as we packing it, you have to go in layers. When you pack gravel as a base material for a patio or a wall, you don't want to compact it in more than layers of about 3 or 4 inches at the max. So you want to put about 3 inches in at a time, pack it, 3 more inches, pack it until you get up to your right level. Of course, the first few times you pack it, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super smooth. You know, as you get up to the top, you want it to be nice and even, because that's what your wall is going to sit on. So let's get started. Keep watching. We're going to build this in a couple steps. You can see I put gravel in the trench, and I just quickly raked it. I'm not terribly concerned. I just want it roughly level, because this is only my first about 3-inch layer of base material. Now I'm about pretty compacted, but before I do so, I need to put a little bit of moisture in the 411 base. You don't want to flood this space, but you do just want to make it damp. The water will help it compact more fully. Whew. So that's the most tiring part. Now I'm just going to add more base material, about another 3 inches or so. I'm going to do the same thing again. Ideally, I'm going to be looking at trying to get this base within about 2 or 3 inches of my finished sod surface. So one thing I did note, or one thing I forgot to note to you before, is that on your retaining wall, you want to start with your lowest point, and that's where your first blocks will go down. So almost always your lowest point is going to be your starting position. And if you can see the one where I put base in already, you will run your first course of retaining wall, your base level, starting at the lowest point, and you run it all the way as far as you can. So in this situation, my lowest point's about where that red level is, and we're going to run it as far around as we can until our first course of retaining wall blocks go underground completely. So once your first level of retaining wall blocks go underground completely, you'll run it an additional foot or so under the ground, so that your next set of wall blocks will be able to stack on top of the ones that are already buried. So remember, lowest spot first, follow it around as far as you can, and then continue it. Depending on what kind of block you're using, you're going to want to continue it about 1 foot to 2 feet past that spot. Okay, so next step in building our retaining wall is we have most of the base material. In the trench now. We've raked it out and we leveled it in several phases, and we tamped it as you saw in the last part. So the next thing we're going to do is we double check our level. Now you want to make sure that you level it horizontally this direction, so that your wall is level across the whole way. In order to do that, you'll use a longer level, and just put it in your trench just like this, to make sure it's level. And you have to do this one course at a time. So first course, you'll put it down, you'll level it like this. But also, you'll need a smaller level like this to try to make sure that when you put your blocks in, they're not leaning forward or backwards. It's important that the wall is level, but it's also important that the trench is level front to back. So you want to use a smaller level like this to put in your trench, so you can check it both ways. After you've done that, you're ready to put some blocks in place. So we're going to do that now, and then I'll give you an update. Alright, so we've got some of our first base layer of the wall done, and as you can see, we've started it to the point in the center at the lowest spot, and we've worked our way out to where we've got the last block on our retaining wall actually is below grade. So this block here, it starts to go under grade, and then here this one will be completely buried. That way our next layer can wrap around top of it. Now each block, every time I put a block in, I'm going to check to make sure our wall overall is still level across. I'll do that with a larger level to make sure we're on track. And then each block we're going to level front to back also, with a shorter level, and I'll usually check on the sides to make sure that we're level. And you'll want to go one by one. Now the next block we put in, I'll do the same thing with. I'm just going to set it in, and then we're going to level it. Now when you set a block in place, if your base is good, it'll get you most of the way there. Depending on which wall blocks you have, you want to make sure this front joint right here is touching, it's even. If your blocks are crooked like this, then this gap will widen out either on the top or the bottom. But you want to make sure that these gaps are close. So the first thing I usually do is get back, take a look at it. I'll take a mallet and I'll bump the block into position, and I'll make sure it's tight in conjunction with the other. Then at that point, I'll double check my height front to back. In this situation, it's almost dead on. So it's dead on, we're done. Now I'll check it with the long level, like this, to make sure the wall is level across, and it still is. I'll look also underneath the level, see if there's any gaps underneath of my level. Because if so, the next course will be varied. So we're good on this one, and we're going to put the next one in place. Now when you level these, or when you have to move the blocks around, it's best to try to relieve the pressure and lift up on them some instead of just scoot them. Because if you scoot the blocks, it'll scoot your base material over. So as you're putting the blocks in place, you want to sort of relieve the pressure as you move it, or else you're going to scoot it. And when you're looking at these blocks to level it, if you get one little pebble, even like here in this spot, then it'll hold your other block out 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't take anything but one tiny little pebble to get in your way. So you want to make sure this is clean and not scoot it, because you'll wedge pebbles and things in between them. So we've got this one. We're going to look at the level here. See, now we see it's high on this front corner. And over here, it's high across the front edge, so I'm trying both sides. Now, I determined that it's high here, one, because you can visually see it. Secondly, I'm looking kind of the last block I know is already level. Since I know the last block is already level, I can use this as sort of a rough guide right along through here. And I can adjust this. You know, if the back of it is really low, then I'll tip it up and I'll put gravel or sand behind it. If it's a little high like it is right now, it's a pretty easy situation. I just take a mallet, I tap it into place, and then I give it a whack with my mallet. Then after I give it a whack with my mallet, I check it again to make sure it's level. It's closer. I need to go one more time. As you work with your level, be sure you don't get any little pebbles like this underneath your level or it'll throw it off. So you have to make sure it's really flat on the surface. So now this block's good. I check this one. I check it again with the one next to it to make sure it didn't shift. And that's good. And then once again, we're going to get the long level. We're going to put across it like this to make sure it's good. Once again, I'm going to check to make sure the entire wall is staying level across. And I want to make sure that underneath of it, I don't have any gaps. So now you can see what our progress is. Just go one block at a time. And we'll keep going one block at a time all the way around here until we get to about over here in this section where our bottom layer goes below grade again, and then our base course will be finished. You can notice we've got about 2 inches there. This is the rough pack. So we'll put our 411 in. We'll bring it up to the same bottom height. So at the bottom of the base level is the same height as the top of the first row. Then we'll just stack our blocks all the way around for our second layer. After that, we'll be kind of home free to put the rest of the blocks on. So hopefully this is helping. Keep watching. We're going to get it wrapped up.